Good morning, dear brother, dear sister. On this new morning that God gives us, I want to share a message with you, and I want you to start this new morning in the best way possible. If you feel you have been waiting a long time for an answer from God, and your heart is weary, then stay here with me. Psalm 13 is the sincere cry of a soul that suffers, waits, and almost loses its strength, but chooses to continue trusting in God. It represents those moments when it seems that the Lord is silent, when the pain lingers, the anguish tightens, and the heart asks, "How long?" But the strength of this psalm lies precisely in this. It teaches us that we can pour out our pain before God without masks, without fear and without guilt. When you pray Psalm 13, something powerful happens. Sadness begins to give way to hope, discouragement begins to be replaced by confidence, and faith is renewed even before the answer arrives. This psalm strengthens the weary heart, restores the joy of salvation, and reminds us that God never abandons those who continue to trust, even amidst tears. And before we move on to this much-needed prayer, I warmly invite you to subscribe to the channel. Here you will receive daily prayers that strengthen your faith, bring comfort to your heart, and help you remain steadfast while God works in His perfect timing. Walk with us on this journey of faith. Let's pray together. Lord God, Father of mercy, I place before you now the life of this person who is with me at this moment. May their day be guarded by your peace. May the afternoon be guided by your presence, and may the night bring true rest to their soul. Where there is weariness, may the Lord bring relief. Where there is confusion, may the Lord bring clarity. Where there is painful silence, may the Lord be present with love. We are not here to fulfill a ritual, but to be with you. Therefore, Holy Spirit, take this time, envelop this heart, and make it clear that the Lord is near. The prayer remains open before you. Now let us walk together through Psalm 13, and it begins in a way that many people do not expect to find in the Bible. It does not begin with praise. It does not begin with victory. It does not begin with strength. It begins with a question, and it is not a gentle question. It is a cry. How long, Lord? David repeats this 4 times, as one who is breathless, as one who knocks on the door of heaven and receives no immediate answer. This psalm is a portrait of a weary soul, not weary of living, but weary of waiting, weary of fighting, weary of not understanding. And here there is something very important that we need to keep in our hearts. David is not sinning by asking. He is not being rebellious. He is not doubting God's existence. He is being honest. He is being human. He is being truthful before a God who knows the heart. When David says, "How long will you forget me?" he is not stating that God has forgotten him. He is saying how he feels. And God allows this, because God does not reject sincere questions. He rejects spiritual masks. The Lord is not pleased with a faith that feigns strength when it is broken inside. He prefers a broken heart to a beautiful but empty prayer. How many times have you felt like this and thought you couldn't talk to God like that? How many times have you swallowed your tears, swallowed your questions, swallowed your pain because you thought you needed to be strong in faith? But Psalm 13 teaches us something liberating. True faith is not the absence of pain. True faith is taking pain to God instead of taking it away from Him. David asks, "How long will you hide your face from me?" This is profound. He doesn't just feel the delay in the answer, he feels the absence of presence, and that hurts more than any external problem. There are times when the situation might even be bearable, if only God's presence were clearly felt. But when the soul feels silence, the weight doubles. Perhaps you are experiencing exactly this. You pray, but it seems like the words hit the ceiling. You read the Bible, but you don't feel the same fire as before. You continue to believe, but you feel a strange emptiness. And the enemy tries to convince you that this is a sign of abandonment. Psalm 13 breaks this lie. It shows that even those closest to God go through periods when His presence seems distant. And this doesn't negate the relationship, it's part of it. David continues, "How long will I have anxieties and sorrow in my heart, day after day?" Notice, it's not just one bad day. It's a cycle, it's repetition, it's accumulated weariness. It's waking up already tired. It's going to bed without relief. It's carrying a full mind and a heavy heart. The Bible doesn't ignore this emotional state. It names it. And when something is named, it loses some of its power to control us. Here is the central revelation of this first movement of the psalm. God is not frightened by your honest despair. He is not offended by your sincere question. He doesn't turn away because you are weak. On the contrary, that's precisely when he listens to you more attentively, because whoever prays like this isn't playing at faith. They are surviving by faith. You can talk to God exactly as you are, without filters, without prepared phrases, without trying to impress. If it hurts, say it hurts. If you're tired, say you're tired. If you're confused, say you're confused. If it seems like he's distant, say that too. God doesn't need you to be strong all the time. He wants you to be true. There's something powerful when you stop trying to explain everything and simply say, "Lord, I'm tired." That phrase, when spoken sincerely, opens a deep space for healing. Because God works better with truth than with appearances. There's a moment in the spiritual journey when the pain changes tone. It's no longer just weariness. Now it's a feeling of emptiness. It's as if heaven has fallen silent. That's exactly where David takes us when he repeats with a heavy heart, "How long will you hide your face from me?" This phrase grips the soul because it describes something many feel, but few have the courage to admit. It's not the lack of faith that hurts. It's the feeling of speaking and not hearing an answer. This verse doesn't speak of real abandonment. God never abandoned David, but it speaks of emotional abandonment. It's when the heart no longer perceives the signs, when the presence that was once clear now seems distant, and that hurts deeply. Because when pain comes with God's presence, we endure it. But when pain comes accompanied by silence, the soul enters into conflict. David doesn't say, "How long will you forsake me?" He says, "How long will you hide your face?" This is very important. He knows God is there, but he doesn't feel it. He knows God is faithful, but he doesn't perceive it. He knows God is powerful, but he doesn't see movement. This reveals spiritual maturity mixed with human frailty. He doesn't break his faith, but exposes his pain. Here comes a revelation that changes everything. God's silence is never absence, it's a process. God is silent not because he has distanced himself, but because he is working on levels you cannot yet see. When God is silent, he doesn't cross his arms. He moves circumstances, adjusts people, prepares times, matures the heart, builds something greater than the immediate answer you're asking for. The problem is that we interpret silence as rejection, but God interprets silence as preparation. There are things God doesn't answer because if he answered now, it would prevent you from growing. There are answers that only make sense after the heart matures. God's silence is not punishment. Often it is care. If God answered everything we ask for immediately, he would often spare us pain, but he would also rob us of depth. Silence reveals what is still fragile within us. He exposes where our faith was more connected to feeling than to trusting. And this is not to shame us, it is to strengthen us. David feels that God's face is hidden, but the fact that he continues to pray proves that the relationship still exists. Those who lack faith withdraw in silence. Those who have faith remain, even without answers. Remaining without feeling is one of the highest levels of spiritual trust. It is saying, "I don't see, but I continue. I don't feel, but I remain. I don't understand, but I won't leave." Perhaps you are experiencing exactly this now. You haven't abandoned God, but you feel that God is distant. You keep going, you keep praying, you keep believing, but something feels cold. And the enemy tries to use this silence to plant lies. God doesn't care. God has forgotten you. Your prayer has no value. Psalm 13 dismantles these lies. It shows that even the chosen ones go through this valley. The application here is profoundly practical. When God seems distant, remember that He is still working behind the scenes. Even when you don't see, there are hands moving. Even when you don't feel, there is care happening. Even when the sky seems closed, God is closer than you imagine. Now I pray within this moment, without closing the prayer that has already begun. Lord, this person may be experiencing your silence, and silence hurts. But today, they learn that silence is not abandonment. Give them peace to wait, strength to persevere, and sensitivity to trust. May they not interpret your silence as rejection, but as a process. Sustain their heart while you work where eyes cannot reach. We continue here, Father, with open hearts, walking with you, even when the voice has not yet come. There's a part of this journey that almost never appears to others. It's silent, invisible, solitary. David takes us precisely to this place when he says that he carries anxieties in his soul and sadness in his heart, day after day. He's not talking about an external attack, a visible enemy, a concrete threat. He's talking about what happens inside, the inner battle that no one sees, but that consumes energy, steals sleep, and wears down hope. This verse reveals that David's suffering is not episodic, it's continuous. Day after day. This means that he wakes up with the weight and goes to sleep with the same weight. The body continues to function, but the mind does not rest. Thoughts repeat themselves, questions return, memories hurt, worries accumulate. This is one of the deepest forms of human suffering because it leaves no external marks, but leaves the soul exhausted. Here is a revelation that many need to hear. Many of the greatest battles of faith don't happen outside. They happen inside the mind. That's where the enemy works most intensely. It's not always with visible tragedies, but with constant thoughts. Thoughts of guilt, fear, inadequacy, failure, comparison, and hopelessness. The person continues going to church, continues working, continues smiling, but inside they are struggling not to give up. David doesn't spiritualize this pain by pretending everything is all right. He names the battle. He acknowledges the mental and emotional conflict. That is spiritual maturity, because what is not acknowledged cannot be dealt with, and what is not taken to God ends up being carried alone. How many times have you tried to win this battle with willpower alone? Tried to control your thoughts, distract yourself, keep busy, convince yourself that it will pass. And sometimes it passes for a moment, but then it comes back. Because this war is not won with human strategy alone. It needs to be taken to God's presence. A tired mind is fertile ground for spiritual lies. When we are exhausted inside, we begin to believe things that are not true. We think we are too weak, that our faith is gone, that God is disappointed, that we won't succeed, and these lies accumulate, creating an almost unbearable emotional weight. David teaches us something powerful here. Take your weary thoughts to God before they suffocate you. Don't wait for your mind to collapse to pray. Don't wait for your heart to harden to speak. Don't wait to lose your joy completely. Take it now. Take it as it is. Take it confused. Take it tired. Take it repetitive. God never tires of hearing what is still hurting. There is relief when you stop fighting alone against your own mind and invite God into that space. God's presence doesn't automatically eliminate thoughts, but it changes their weight. What once seemed unbearable begins to be bearable. What once seemed definitive begins to be temporary. What once seemed hopeless begins to have hope. And I continue praying with you within this truth. Lord, you see the battle that no one else sees. You know the thoughts that repeat themselves, the sleepless nights, the internal dialogues full of weight. This person may be smiling on the outside, but inside they are tired. Enter into this place, Father. Touch this mind. Calm this heart. May these weary thoughts find rest in you before they suffocate the soul. We continue in this prayer, trusting that the Lord also takes care of the invisible battles. There comes a point in the journey where the problem is no longer just the struggle, but the length of time it lasts. David illustrates this when he asks, "How long will my enemy triumph over me?" He's not saying he's been defeated, but that he's tired of seeing the situation seem victorious for so long. It's the erosion of hope. It's when the soul begins to wonder not if God can act, but when he will act. This pain is different. It's not the initial impact of the battle, but the accumulated effect of waiting. In the beginning, there is strength, there is faith, there is energy to fight. But as the days pass, the months pass, and nothing changes, the heart begins to weaken. The enemy here is not just a person or circumstance. Often it is time itself, time that stretches on without an answer, without a sign, without relief. And here is a revelation that needs to be clearly stated. The time of waiting can hurt more than the struggle itself, because you face the struggle, but you endure the waiting. And enduring for a long time is exhausting. Waiting tests faith in a way that direct battle doesn't. It challenges patience, trust, and hope. David feels as if the enemy is exalting himself, not because he actually won, but because he seems to have the upper hand. He seems to be in control. He seems to be dominating the narrative. And this generates a silent weariness. That's when you start to wonder if it's still worth continuing to believe in the same way, praying in the same way, waiting in the same way. But it is precisely at this point that something profound happens in the spiritual world. Persisting in faith during waiting is one of the most intense forms of worship. When you praise with victory in hand, that's beautiful. But when you continue trusting without an answer, that's powerful. It declares that your faith is not conditioned on the immediate result, but on the character of God. God observes this kind of perseverance. He sees when you continue, even when tired. He sees when you don't give up, even when you don't understand. He sees when you don't abandon, even when you feel worn out. And this does not go unnoticed. Waiting is not wasted time. It's a time of inner building. The enemy tries to use the delay to undermine hope. He whispers that nothing will change, that it has always been this way, that it will always be this way. But Psalm 13 teaches us that questioning the timing is not abandoning faith. David asks, but he doesn't turn away. He expresses his weariness, but remains in prayer. That is spiritual maturity, and the application becomes very practical now. Don't confuse delay with defeat. The fact that it still hurts doesn't mean God has lost control. The fact that it's still difficult doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. Sometimes waiting is the last stage before the turning point, and even if you don't see it yet, God is using this time to strengthen something within you that will sustain what comes next. Suddenly, something changes within the prayer. The situation doesn't change yet. The external scenario doesn't change, but the tone of David's voice changes. He moves from questioning to requesting. He stops merely expressing pain and decides to cry out directly, "Pay attention to me, answer me, Lord." This is powerful because it shows that even tired, even wounded, even confused, he doesn't surrender to silence. He decides to break through. This request reveals spiritual courage. David refuses to remain in emotional darkness. He doesn't conform to living anesthetized, merely surviving spiritually. He asks for attention, he asks for an answer, he asks for light. He is saying, "God, I need you to intervene here." It's not an arrogant request. It's a cry from someone who knows who he's talking to. There's a profound truth here. When you pray with truth, heaven responds with direction. Not always with the immediate answer we expect, but with enough light to take the next step. God does not ignore a sincere prayer. He may not change everything at once, but He always illuminates the path for those who cry out with an open heart. David asks for light for his eyes. This isn't just physical, it's spiritual, emotional, mental. He knows that if he continues in that inner darkness, the risk isn't just sadness, it's giving up. Prolonged darkness tires the soul and weakens faith. That's why he prays, not because he feels strong, but precisely because he feels weak. And here is a liberating revelation. Prayer doesn't depend on emotion. You don't pray because you feel like it. You pray because you need to. You don't pray because you're excited. You pray because you are spiritually alive. There are days when prayer is pleasure, and there are days when prayer is survival. And God honors both. Many people stop praying because they think they need to feel good to pray. Psalm 13 breaks that pattern. David prays from the depths of exhaustion. He prays without spiritual makeup. He prays without pretty phrases. And that moves heaven, because God responds to truth, not performance. The application is simple and profound. Pray even when you don't feel strong. If you can't speak much, speak little. If you can't organize your words, just say, "Pay attention to me." God understands. He knows the weight behind that phrase. He knows what it carries. He knows what you are asking for even when you can't explain it. Lord, this person may be weak, but still decides to pray. Pay attention to them, Father. Illuminate their eyes. Bring clarity where there is confusion, relief where there is weight, hope where there is weariness. May they not remain in emotional darkness. Answer, Lord, in your time and in your way, but do not leave them without direction. We continue in this living prayer, trusting that heaven moves when truth rises. Deep within David's cry lies a fear he doesn't hide. He says, "Lest I sleep the sleep of death." This isn't just poetic language, it's the confession of someone who has reached their limit. He's saying, "Lord, if you don't intervene, I can't take it anymore." This verse reveals that David recognizes his fragility. He understands that there's a point where human strength ends, and this doesn't distance him from God. On the contrary, it draws him closer. This fear isn't a lack of faith. It's an awareness of one's own limitations. David isn't saying that God has failed. He's saying that he himself is weak. There's a big difference between these two things. Many people distance themselves from God because they confuse weakness with spiritual failure. But the Bible shows that recognizing weakness is maturity. Only the proud pretend they never reach their limit. When David speaks of the sleep of death, he's not just talking about physical death. He's talking about the risk of fading away inside, of losing spiritual sensitivity, of letting hope die, of remaining alive on the outside, but empty on the inside. This is a real danger when the struggle drags on and the silence weighs heavily. That's why he prays. He doesn't wait to fall to ask for help. He cries out while he still has a voice. There is something very powerful in this attitude. David doesn't try to prove anything to God. He doesn't try to show that he is strong. He presents himself as he is. And here comes a revelation that needs to be carefully guarded. God acts with power where there is humility. Where someone admits, "I can't do it alone," there God enters with grace. Where someone recognizes, "I've reached my limit," there God manifests strength. Perhaps you are experiencing this same feeling. It's not that you no longer believe, it's that you are too tired to fight as before. And fear isn't about losing faith all at once, it's about fading away little by little. Psalm 13 teaches you that this fear can be taken to God without shame. God is not frightened when you say, "Father, I can't take it anymore like this." Present your limits to God. Don't hide your weakness thinking that this makes you less spiritual. On the contrary, acknowledged weakness becomes space for God's strength to manifest. Humility attracts divine action. And I continue to pray for you at this delicate point. Lord, This person recognizes their limitations before you. They don't want to fade away inside. They don't want to lose hope. Sustain them now. Where human strength has ended, manifest your strength. Where the soul is weary, breathe life. Where there is fear of succumbing, bring security. We continue in this prayer, trusting that the Lord does not abandon those who cry out to him with humility. Something happens within David that doesn't come from outside, it comes from within. Nothing in the text indicates that the situation has changed, that the enemy has retreated, or that the problem has disappeared. Even so, he declares, "But as for me, I trust in your mercy." This phrase marks the spiritual turning point of the psalm. It's not a turning point of circumstances, it's a turning point of the heart. It's when faith stops reacting to pain and begins to rise above it. This change of tone reveals a conscious decision. David doesn't say that the pain is over, he says that he has chosen to trust. And this is profoundly spiritual. True faith doesn't wait to feel in order to trust. It decides to trust even when it feels nothing. It's a faith that doesn't depend on the environment nor on the emotional state. It anchors itself in the character of God, not in the situation of the moment. God's mercy becomes the point of support. David doesn't trust in his own strength, nor in his own history, nor in his own faithfulness. He trusts in mercy. That is, he relies on God's love that remains even when everything is unstable. Mercy is the love that doesn't give up, that doesn't turn away, that doesn't change according to human performance. And it is in this love that David stands firm. This verse teaches us something very liberating. Trust is not a constant feeling, it's a daily choice. There are days when trusting is easy, there are days when trusting hurts. But every day, trusting is a decision. You wake up and decide where you will rest your heart, in the pain that screams or in the mercy that sustains. Perhaps you don't feel peace now. Perhaps your heart is still heavy. Perhaps the answer hasn't come yet. Even so, you can make the same choice as David. You can say, "I still trust." This phrase, when spoken in the midst of pain, has enormous spiritual weight. It realigns the soul. It silences inner voices. It declares that pain will not have the final word. Choose to trust, even without feeling it. Don't wait for the environment to change to decide to trust. Decide to trust and let God in his own time transform the environment. Trust doesn't negate pain, but it prevents pain from ruling. And I continue praying with you at this turning point. Lord, this person decides to trust, even though it still hurts. They choose to rely on your mercy, not on circumstances. Strengthen this decision. Sustain this daily choice. May their trust not depend on what they feel, but on who you are. We continue in this living prayer, walking from lament to trust, step by step in your presence. David's heart begins to breathe again. He hasn't yet escaped the situation, hasn't yet seen the answer materialize, doesn't yet have external proof that everything will change. Even so, he declares something that seems too bold for someone who was so downcast. My heart will rejoice in your salvation. Notice the tense of the phrase. It's not rejoiced, nor is joyful now. It's a joy that is born in the present because of something he believes will come. This is one of the most profound changes in the psalm. The pain hasn't disappeared, but hope has returned. And when hope returns, the soul finds space for joy, even before the visible victory. This is not a denial of reality, it's spiritual vision. It's seeing beyond the present. It's trusting that God is already acting, even if the eyes don't yet see. Here is a powerful revelation. Spiritual joy precedes visible victory. First, joy springs up in the heart, then the miracle manifests itself on the scene. God works from the inside out. He restores the interior before transforming the exterior. And this joy doesn't come from circumstances, it comes from the certainty of salvation, deliverance, and God's care. David doesn't say he will rejoice in the problem being solved. but in God's salvation. This means that the source of joy is not the end of the struggle, but the certainty that God intervenes. He rejoices not because everything is all right, but because God is faithful. This joy is a spiritual force. It restores courage, renews energy, and weakens the weight of waiting. When you praise before the miracle, something happens within you. Faith is strengthened, fear loses ground, anxiety diminishes, the heart aligns with heaven. Praising before the answer doesn't hasten God, but prepares you to receive what He will do. It's a sign of mature trust. Praise before the miracle. Don't wait for everything to be resolved to give thanks. Give thanks because God is already taking care of it. Even if it's a simple, silent, internal praise, say, Lord, I still don't see, but I trust. It still hurts, but I rejoice in your salvation. The psalm reaches its final movement with something that, at first glance, seems unexpected. David doesn't end by questioning. He doesn't end by asking. He doesn't end by complaining. He ends by singing, I will sing to the Lord. Not because everything has been resolved, but because something has been resolved within him. This is the mark of a mature faith, a faith that doesn't depend on immediate results to worship. The praise here is not a result of comfort, it is a result of trust. David chooses to sing in the midst of waiting. He doesn't ignore the pain, but he also doesn't allow the pain to dictate the final tone of his story. This is profound spirituality. Praising when everything is all right is natural. Praising when it still hurts is supernatural. There is a powerful revelation at this point. Praise in the midst of pain confuses the enemy and strengthens the soul. The enemy expects silence, isolation, giving up. He expects you to close yourself off, to withdraw, to stop seeking God. But when you praise even with tears, you break that expectation. Praise repositions the heart and creates an environment where hope breathes again. Singing here is not just music. It's an expression of faith. It's declaring with your mouth what your heart has decided to believe. It's saying, God continues to be good, even though I don't yet see everything. Praise doesn't change God, but it changes the one who praises. It transforms lament into strength, pain into surrender, weariness into renewal. Perhaps you can't sing loudly now. Perhaps praise comes in the form of a simple phrase, a quiet prayer, a sigh of gratitude. That too is praise. God doesn't measure volume, He sees sincerity. And when praise is born amidst pain, it rises as something precious. Sing even with tears. Don't wait for your eyes to dry to praise. Praise with a choked voice, with a heavy heart, with hope still fragile. God transforms this praise into spiritual strength. He takes what began as lament and turns it into worship. And I continue praying with you in this place of spiritual maturity. Lord, teach this person to praise even while waiting. May their praise not be conditioned by circumstances, but by your faithfulness. Transform lament into song, pain into surrender, weariness into renewed faith. We continue in this living prayer until praise becomes testimony. David concludes this psalm with a simple phrase, yet one laden with spiritual weight, because he has been good to me. Notice that he doesn't say, because everything turned out all right, or because the problem is over. He speaks of God's character. He looks back and remembers. He recalls, and this memory sustains everything he has yet to see. Here is the final certainty that seals Psalm 13. God always acts with kindness, even when the answer is delayed, even when the silence hurts, even when the struggle is prolonged. God's goodness doesn't depend on the moment. It is part of who He is. David anchors himself in this. He revisits history. He recalls past deliverances, unseen care, moments when God appeared when it seemed too late. This spiritual memory is a powerful weapon. The memory of past faithfulness sustains faith in the present. When the present is confusing, looking back brings balance. When the future seems uncertain, remembering what God has already done restores hope. David understands that the same God who was good before continues to be good now, even if the situation hasn't changed. Often, what we lack isn't faith in the future, but memory of the past. We forget too quickly the doors God opened, the falls from which He lifted us, the times we thought we wouldn't survive and yet we did. Remembering God's goodness doesn't erase current pain, but it prevents it from defining us. David ends this psalm feeling lighter, not because life has become easy, but because he decided to trust in God's character. He begins by asking, "How long?" and ends by declaring He has been good. That is spiritual growth, that is maturity, that is faith that overcomes pain and emerges stronger on the other side. When the future seems uncertain, remember what God has already done. Recall, bring to mind, relive testimonies, write it down if necessary. Speak aloud, say to your own soul, "God has been good to me and He will not stop being good now." Help that person remember. Remember the deliverances, the provisions, the times when the Lord was good when all seemed lost. May this memory strengthen her faith today. May she not walk looking only at what is lacking, but also at what has already been done. Sustain her heart with the certainty that your goodness remains. We continue in this open prayer before you, trusting that the Lord continues to write this story with faithfulness and love.